Hello and welcome to another episode of the WEM Video Academy. Today we are going to have a look at using the export to JSON node in order to prepare a request to a REST API. REST APIs are very popular nowadays. They provide simple and scalable web services that can handle large volumes of data and traffic. Many REST APIs use JSON as the format for sending structured data inside a text string. Let's take this simple flowchart as a starting point. We see an interaction node and an HTTP request node sending a POST request to a web service. The request node can be called using an exit button inside the interaction node template. The status code 400 exits to an overlay node, while the default flow exits towards an import from JSON node, before returning to the interaction node. Do you want to learn how to build an HTTP GET or POST request? Then look for the HTTP request node video also featured in the WEM Video Academy. We will preview the result of the flowchart first. In the interaction node, we see two expandable panels listing the values of the HTTP request and response session fields. These fields will contain the request to and response from the POST request after making the call to the web service. We click the button and we see a block of JSON data appearing in our response panel. The JSON response is passed by the import from JSON node following the HTTP request, and the map data will show in this data grid. Do you want to learn how to import data from JSON? Then look for the import from JSON video also featured in the WEM Video Academy. In many cases, an HTTP POST request requires a request body, either in the so-called raw format, usually JSON, or using form fields. One way to create this request body is to use an assignment node on the HTTP request field and fill out a static expression. Here's an example of a static expression. The expression is of the text type, which means the expression needs to be packed in double quotes. However, the JSON body itself also requires double quotes around the key names and the string values. You can build a string like this by escaping the internal double quotes of the JSON object with backslashes. In preview, we can see the HTTP request value rendering like this. This method of building a request expression is not feasible for large and dynamic expressions. A better way to do this is to use the export data node from the flowchart node bar. When dragging this node into the flowchart, we can select the export format and we choose JSON for this use case. By the way, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. First, we need to define where the JSON data for the export will be sent to. This is the same HTTP request session field that we used in our assignment node. We will drag this HTTP request field into the destination property of the export JSON node. The next step is to create the so-called mapping between the JSON object and the data model. Mapping is the process of linking the content of every key value pair in the JSON object to data fields in the data model. There are two ways to start this process: manually or by importing a sample. The easiest way is the sample one, but we need the request format of the web service for that, which may not be available during our development phase. For training purposes, we will first show you how to create a manual mapping from scratch. A JSON object may contain the following three components. An object contains a key value pair of data or an array of data. A JSON object is defined by a pair of curly brackets. A JSON mapping in WEM usually starts with an object. An array contains a collection of data, for instance, a list of persons. An array may contain a list of objects and may also be part of an object itself, in which case it will be a named array. A named array will be mapped to a database list in our data model. A JSON array is defined by a pair of square brackets. A literal or primitive equals one key value pair. A key value pair consists of a literal key and a value property that can be bound to a particular field in our data model. For instance, a text field, a numeric field, or a Boolean field, and we can also import date fields. For each array and key value pair, we can set an include when Boolean property. Here we have a valid mapping structure of a JSON object to a data model. The array is mapped to a database list, and the key value pairs are mapped to data fields inside that list. Note that you can also map arrays inside arrays, in which case you will require a nested list in your database list. For large JSON objects, it will be time-consuming to create the mapping structure manually. For this purpose, we have the Create Mapping Example button. If we have the request structure of the web service available, we can copy that data and paste it inside the expression window behind this button. We will inspect the documentation of the web service, and we locate the request format for HTTP requests. We then copy the structure, click the Create Mapping Example button, choose the option from Text, and paste our copied object inside the window. When clicking the Save button, we will see an error. This is because the object needs to contain actual data and not data types. We can easily overcome this by replacing text types by an empty string and numeric types by a 0. Booleans and dates can be submitted in a similar way. Of course, you can also use an actual JSON data object for this purpose. After a few seconds of processing, you will see the resulting mapping structure in your dialog. It is good practice to save the mapping structure first and then open it again for the actual mapping process. Now we will start the actual mapping against the data model, in this case a list of customers. Don't forget to drag the list in the array property and then drag the corresponding list fields inside the key value pairs one by one, if there are more than one. Make sure to save your work regularly when dealing with large mapping structures. Time for a test. Remember to reroute the post request exit to the export JSON node and let the export JSON node exit to the HTTP post request node. Now let's preview the flowchart. We will call the web service, and after a short while, we see both the JSON request to the web service and the JSON response from the web service. As before, the data is mapped and shown in our data grid. We have now concluded a successful export of part of our data model into a JSON object. And that concludes our video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your feedback in the comments below and share the video with your colleagues and friends. We hope to see you soon again in the WEM Video Academy.